Well, as promised, let's turn again to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Israel says its troops have entered the heart of southern Gaza's largest city. That's where they believe Hamas leaders could be hiding, in Khan Yunis. It's among the most intense fighting since Israel's ground offensive began. The United Nations says more than 80% of Gaza's population has now been driven from their homes. Well, let's talk now to Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, who joins me live on the programme. Welcome here to BBC News. Do you agree with what Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying in the last 24 hours, that the war can only be won with crushing force?
Well, good evening, Matthew. Good to be with you. I don't know how else it can be won, but it has to be won. Let's start from that. Israel cannot afford to lose the war. We lose the war, we lose this country. It becomes uninhabitable. We have 250,000 people who are homeless on our side, who can't go back to their homes if Hamas is allowed to reorganize, rearm, and launch another attack. And that's precisely what Hamas leaders are saying they're going to do. They're not hiding that in any way. So large swaths of the country will become uninhabitable. We're going to have to keep fighting. And I don't know how you win a war other than with force.
The US Vice President said only a couple of days ago, too many Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. The scale of the suffering and the images are devastating. Do you think that too many Palestinians have been killed? And do you think that the images and the scale of the suffering is devastating?
I think one Palestinian death is too many, one Palestinian civilian death. But that's a situation when you have an enemy, Hamas, which is hiding behind those civilians. The Israeli army now is moving into the south around the city of Khan Yunis. Underneath the city of Khan Yunis is a massive matrix of tunnels going some takes 200 feet deep, about 300 miles of tunnels. And Hamas built those tunnels onto the city of Khan Yunis in order to use the people of Khan Yunis as a human shield. Israel will take superhuman efforts to minimize as much as possible civilian deaths.
Sure,
keep in mind, it's not,
I mean, when you talk,
Matthew,
you talk like Israel has nothing to do with the Palestinian casualty numbers.
It has everything to do with the Palestinian numbers because it is fighting against an enemy that's hiding behind those Palestinian civilians. We not just have a moral interest. Keep this in mind. We also have a strategic interest. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, needs time and space to complete this battle. And every civilian death increases pressure on Israel, especially on the international community, to enforce a ceasefire. A ceasefire means Hamas gets away with mass murder. A ceasefire means that we lose the viability of this country. So there's tremendous at stake. Israel has every interest, moral as well as strategic.
Sure, but on the strategy as well as obviously the world watching simply the numbers of Palestinian civilians being killed, you heard what the US Defense Secretary was saying, that there is a huge danger here for Israel, that you emerge from this with a military victory perhaps, but a broader strategic failure in terms of what you've done and what you've pushed Palestinians into.
We don't know that. We know that Israel has fought wars since 1948.
Sure, but that's the danger, isn't it?
Again,
he's right about that. No, that's the danger.
Israel has fought wars again and again since 1948, and some of our enemies have internalized that making war against us is not a good idea. It's better to make peace with us. That's true in Egypt and Jordan and the four signatories to the Abraham Accords. So not true. Every time we defend ourselves, we create more enemies. Sometimes when we defend ourselves, we get friends. And I think there's going to be a growing number of Palestinians who will also internalize that the Hamas way is not the way to ensure the best future for their children and grandchildren.
Sure.
At the end of the day, we still have no choice. You have to internalize this. This is not a matter of choice for this country. It's a matter of life and death for this country. And yes, it's terribly tragic and painful that Hamas is hiding behind its civilian population.
You say that you have no choice. The tactics, of course, are a choice. If you're a Palestinian civilian told to evacuate, where should they go?
Any way we can possibly tell them to leave. But we have a very difficult situation where Hamas is actually moving with the civilian population. We tell the civilian population to move out of an area. Hamas moves with the civilian population.
That's not an answer, though. That's not an answer. Where is safe for Palestinian civilians to go in the knowledge that they won't be hit by the sort of bombardment that we're seeing?
We will do the utmost to move them out of those areas. Again, we're dealing with an enemy.
Sorry to interrupt you again, but that is not an answer. If you're a Palestinian trying to work out, and we have the grid on the screen at the moment, try to work out where is safe for me, I know I've got to leave, that's what I'm being told, but where is safe to go? Where is safe to go? I mean, there is the area Al-Masawi, but that, as the UN has been saying, is a tiny patch of barren land, nothing there, no facilities, no water, no shelter. That's where you're effectively saying 600,000 people should go.
We are going to move them wherever they can possibly move and urge them to move. We're not going to move them physically. We'll urge them to move any place where we believe combat is going to take place. You're not going to accept my answer, but that's the answer. If you have a better answer for defending your country, I'd like to hear it. Because you don't have one, certainly. We have to win this war. And we have to do it.
I'm simply asking you where is safe. It's a really simple question. I'm asking you, where is safe?
It's safe anywhere where Hamas isn't. And if Hamas is hiding behind the civilian population, then no place is safe in Gaza, is it now? That's logical. And I think, you can keep asking the same question over and over again.
I asked Mark Regev this question. I asked Mark Regev the question yesterday. He did not accept that there are no safe areas in the Gaza Strip. He said that wasn't the case. And you're acknowledging that perhaps there aren't any safe areas.
As long as Hamas is going to keep on hiding behind the civilian population, and we have to destroy Hamas, then the responsibility for any civilian deaths falls on Hamas. It's very curious to me why you're not making a very simple request, and that is Hamas surrenders, that Hamas gives up. I haven't heard the word Hamas once. And, that Hamas gives up its hostages and ends the carnage. This war can end literally in a second if Hamas surrenders. But you're not making that demand now, are you?
I'm not talking to Hamas. I'm not talking to Hamas. I'm not talking to Hamas at the moment. If I was talking to them, perhaps those are the questions I'd be asking. But I'm talking to you about Israel's tactics. Do you think the tactics you are currently using, the operations, do you think they are making safer or imperiling further the situation the hostages are in?
I think about the hostages now. That we don't know. We don't know where the hostages are. We know that there would have been no hostage negotiations at all had Israel not had a ground incursion into Gaza and increased the pressure on Hamas. Hamas will negotiate when it's under pressure. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Hamas will come back in the next few days and say we're willing to negotiate again. I personally won't be surprised. I hope that would be the case. But there's no knowing, because you're not dealing with an honest broker here. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's not going to negotiate in good faith. And that's the nature. It's like negotiating with ISIS or with Al-Qaeda. And so we are going to press the war to ensure our survival. I know that may be difficult for the BBC to internalize, but that's what this is about. And it may be difficult for the BBC to internalize that we have an enemy that's hiding behind the civilian population. And yes, it's tragic, and yes, it's painful, but we have no choice. And we are doing the utmost to minimize those civilian casualties because that's our moral interest, and it's also our strategic interest.
Just a final thought. Do you think America is running out of patience with the tactics that they're now seeing unfolding by the Israelis in the south?
I think the Biden administration is paying a political price for this. And as we enter an election year, it's paying a political price, particularly among a young progressive wing of the Democratic Party. But the American people, over 75% of them, remain overwhelmingly supporting of Israel in this crisis.
Michael Oren, we have to leave it there, but thanks for taking time to speak to us. Thank you.
Bye-bye.